Hey, welcome to the Rebel Reset. I'm Dr. Infantino. Look, if you're out there and you've tried every supplement, medication, doctor, everything you could think of, you watch YouTube videos until you're just sick of it, you're on this journey, I hear that every day, and you're like, no more journeys, and you just want to get to the bottom, root cause, solve the problem once and for all, you are going to love this podcast. So stick around. I'm going to share everything I learned in 30 years. I promise it'll be a blessing to you. Hey, it's Dr. Infantino. I'm back. You're probably wondering, where has he been? Well, I've been doing all sorts of reorganizing as far as how we do what we do at the office. Opened up some different rooms, and it's super exciting. Really able to focus more on helping people get to the root cause of problems. In fact, now instead of just working locally in our office in Scottsdale, things are really all over the place. We've got patients all over the country, which is kind of weird because you would ask me a year or so ago if I'd be doing Zoom calls for patients around the country. I'd have thought you were nuts. You know, I always thought doctors work in offices. That's the only way to do this. You sit down, you got a patient in front of you. Not so much anymore. My hardest part of my day now is just the technology. So thankfully I got an awesome team who showed me how to actually do a Zoom call, which, you know, you'd think would be pretty straightforward. There's a lot of moving parts to that stuff. But super excited. It is so nice to be back. Today we're going to talk about some really cool stuff. In particular, getting to the root cause of health issues. Because my gosh, I can't tell you how many people come into me every day and they bring me bags of supplements. They bring me prescriptions they're taking. They're just so frustrated. And the thing I hear all the time is like, Doc, I've been on this journey. And my heart goes out to them because, you know, I was on a journey. I think a lot of people are. They're trying to figure out answers. You know, they're looking at like videos and this and that and like, what do I do and how do I get this right? And they bring me all sorts of supplements that have been recommended, and still they struggle because honestly, at best, the supplements are maybe maintaining things, but they're not actually getting to a point where they can ditch the meds, the supplements, get on with their life, you know, go play with their kids and their grandkids and just not have to struggle with this stuff anymore. So, you know, it really does boil down to figuring out what's the actual problem you're trying to solve. It's not so much what supplement is good for which symptom, right? Because, you know, there are supplements for inflammation, turmeric. You could take a milk thistle for a liver. You could take L-glutamine. You could take berberine for, you know, insulin resistance, and on and on. And if you're listening to me, you probably are chuckling right now because I bet you anything I can name all the supplements that are sitting in the closet behind you or in the kitchen somewhere. And, you know, maybe your spouse is going, do we really need all these things? And the answer is probably not. I mean, really, when it comes to supplements, I'm kind of a minimalist. I take essentially a multi and a multi-mineral, really, because our food is soil's depleted, so not a lot of minerals getting into us anymore. I think a probiotic's a pretty good idea, but you know, the problem with it is, and when people have a whole bunch of supplements and thinking it's really working, you know, getting them well, it's again that they're managing symptoms of a problem and not getting to the cause of the problem and eliminating it. And so I'll be honest, after 30 years of doing this, thousands of people later, the main problem really originates with a gut and a liver that just aren't working properly. Right? So one of the main things people come to me with, they bring me bags of probiotics, the billion, zillion, trillion one, and they're like, why isn't this working? I'm still feeling kind of bloated. I'm brain foggy, my energy's off, my weight maybe is hard to maintain, even though I'm doing what? I'm doing keto, I'm doing intermittent fasting, heck, I'm doing both of them. By the way, why do most people do keto and intermittent fasting? It's the one thing that everybody talks about there, right? It's insulin and insulin resistance. And everybody's like, you gotta keep your insulin down. What most people don't realize, look, if you're eating chicken and broccoli and tuna on a bed of lettuce and you're just really struggling with food and you're like, why won't this weight go down? This used to be a lot easier before, and why don't I feel good and clear and, you know, vibrant and healthy and focused and, you know, sort of sucking the juice out of life, so to speak? It's really almost certainly because you got a gut that's out of balance internally. And what I mean by that is this. When it comes to a gut working properly, it's not about throwing a whole bunch of good probiotics into it. It's about the actual health of the gut itself. When you consider this 3,000 chemicals in our food supply that we get on a regular basis, and things like rounds of antibiotics, I mean, one round can kill about 80% of your gut flora. These things add up over time. Birth control does this, Tylenol, Advil, they all don't just kill the good bacteria, they wipe out the lining of the gut. You can't repopulate a gut if the villi, which is basically the lining, is wiped out. This is what causes things like, I'm sure you're familiar with, leaky gut, etc. So people spend all their time taking, L-glutamine to try to heal a gut, but at the end of the day, you have to scrub the muck clean, restore the villi, repopulate, clean up the liver, get rid of heavy metals. That's really the key to the whole thing. One of the things I hear all the time is, Doc, like I'm taking probiotics and prebiotics and, now there's prebiotics. It's getting kind of ridiculous. It's like, why isn't it working? Why am I bloated, constipated? Why do I have reflux, etc.? So let me break that down for you. Inside your gut, you should have all these little hair-like fibers called villi. Now to understand this is super important. Think of like looking down at the tip of a paintbrush. That's how thick those little hair-like fibers should be. And they line many feet, 15 or so feet of your intestine. On each of these millions of fibers should be millions of good bacteria, right? The reason the fibers are there, just so you understand, is to increase surface area, right? If you were to measure up, down, all around millions of times, you lay it out flat, they estimate that's somewhere between the size of a tennis court and a football field. So like picture that in your head for a second. How big is that? That's how much room you need to house 100 trillion good bacteria. So the things I mentioned before, things like rounds of antibiotics, things like birth control, Tylenol, Advil, anti-inflammatories, coffee, alcohol, the 3,000 chemicals in the food, it adds up over time. So it doesn't just kill the good bacteria. It starts wiping out what I call the shaggy carpet in the book I'm writing. So if you break down this shaggy carpet, what do you end up with? Well, Berber, right? Berber means I've got undigested fecal material coating the gut wall. Now this just so happens is a breeding ground for yeast and all the bad guys. Now, what happens is when you take a bunch of probiotics, if there's no shaggy carpet or no place for the good guys to colonize, what do we end up with? Nothing really, right? You just end up feeding the bad guys. So the yeast that sit in this muck, by the way, you can call it biofilm or mucoid plaque, it's just garbage that has accumulated. So what happens then is the yeast that's sitting there, what do? Well, they grow roots. The roots that the yeast grow are what actually creates something called leaky gut, which you're probably familiar with. Leaky gut means, I'll give you a good analogy. It's like if you ever see a big tree next to a sidewalk and you see like the sidewalk's like this because the root popped it up. Think of that as how the cells pop up, right? Now, we'll get into this a little more. I'll get a little nerdy for a minute just to help you understand this. Now, if stuff from the gut, right, junk, basically fecal material, then can leak into the blood, right? Because between the paintbrush, right, that we talked about, and the blood, there's one layer of cells. So now this is all gone, no paintbrush. You've got the muck, you've got yeast growing roots. They pry the gut wall apart. Stuff leaks into the blood. So if you have food sensitivities, by the way, this is why, almost certainly. If you're eating something that you're like, it's good for me, now it doesn't agree with me, it bothers me, it's because at some time, a piece, or call it a chunk, a bigger chunk of food, right, got through the gut into the blood and your body starts making antibodies to it. Because remember, the role of the good bacteria on all these villi is to digest this food, break it all down, it goes through the cells into the blood, you've got good nutrition, you feel strong, healthy, mentally clear, etc. Most of my patients, what's actually happening is this is gone, yeast are breaking this wall apart, chunks of bad food leak into the blood, and again, that's why people come to me like, I used to eat almonds, now they bother me. I used to eat salmon, now that bothers me. Like, why does that bother me now? That's exactly why. So ultimately, what's the answer? And by the way, before we keep moving on this, I've mentioned like good bacteria, I've mentioned yeast. You should have this many good guys, this many bad guys. Most people that I've tested over the years, well, let's go with the good guys first. You should have 100 trillion good guys, somewhere between 300 and 500 different strains. Most people have 5 to 10% of that at best. As soon as you lose the good, you end up with more bad guys, yeast. Now, normally that's about 1% of your flora. If you end up with more of them, those are the guys that sit in there and they grow roots and they pry the gut wall apart and create all sorts of issues. So people will come to me and they say, well, I'm taking yeast X or Candide or, without naming names, a whole bunch of yeast killing supplements, or I'm doing a Candida diet. So why isn't that working, Doc? Well, the reality is it's not working because you can't just kill yeast and hope that everything gets better. What matters is, do you have enough good guys in their home keeping the bad guys in check? The only reason yeast grow is because they're opportunistic. If there's nobody home keeping them, down, then they grow. When they grow, what happens is they don't just grow roots and create problems like that. What else do yeast do? Well, unfortunately, yeast ferment things. So instead of having good bacteria in your gut digest things, now we've got fermentation happening. So for instance, a good analogy would be like if you're making beer, what do? Well, you get grains like hops and barley and malt. You put it together with yeast and water. You stick that, 100 degrees, you leave it there for a while, and what happens? One of the things you're gonna get are bubbles, right? So if you eat any kind of bread or pasta or carbs or grains and you get bloated, or lactose, right? A lot of people think I'm lactose intolerant all of a sudden. You're not. It's just that those things are yeast's favorite food. So what ends up happening is you put those in and, well, yeast are fermenting those things, and just like when you make beer, you get bubbles. The bubbles are what causes the bloating. Right? It's important to understand. Now picture if you're having that glass of beer, you pour the beer, where do the bubbles go? They go up. So if you're dealing with reflux, what does that mean? It doesn't mean you have too much acid. It means the acid from your stomach is now being forced up because the bubbles are rising. So as acid goes up, now you have reflux. Then we go to well-meaning doctors who are like, well, you got too much acid, take an antacid. Well, now you're not digesting food, even worse, right? So now you got a bigger problem. So it's just important to understand, like, what's the root cause of these digestive issues? What's the root cause, ultimately, of some of these problems? What are the jobs of the good bacteria in the first place, right? Because if there's less of them, well, they can't do their jobs. If at the same time there's more bad guys, and what they're doing is not just making bubbles, but what else do you get when you make beer? Exactly, you get alcohol, so you get ethanol, you get acetaldehyde. Those are products of yeast fermenting something in the gut. So let me ask you, if your gut should be digesting food and giving you good nutrition with a bunch of healthy bacteria, but instead, now you've got a gut that's, well, fermenting things and pumping ethanol, acetaldehyde, right, toxic chemicals into your blood, how do you suppose you feel? Exactly. You feel what? Just kind of run down, energy's off, generally speaking, inflamed. A telltale sign of this is if you have, like, let's say a couple slices of pizza or anything that yeast like, again, grains, dairy, sugar, and you put it in and you get bloated and then you feel tired, or if you feel achy or swollen or joints, rings don't quite fit, that means you have a gut imbalance. You've lost the good, you have more bad. Now, the ethanol, etc., right, it leaks into the blood. I feel tired, achy, stiff, brain foggy, right? Because how does alcohol affect the brain? Negatively. What people say to me almost every day is like, Doc, I don't get it. I walk around, I feel hungover all day. Exactly. It's exactly what's happening, because products of fermentation are alcohol. I've read studies that show you can literally produce the amount of alcohol found in 1 to 8+ beer per day, all day, every day. The more sugar you eat, the worse this is, right? So this is why people come to me like, yeah, I don't do so good with sugar. I kind of gave up the grains and the bread. I'm gluten-free. Gluten, by the way, a genetically modified grain, is like yeast's favorite food. That's why you've heard of celiac disease. And if you're my age, when you were a kid, you had no idea what gluten even was. And now everybody knows what gluten is. This is why, right? So where does all that alcohol end up, you think? Circulates round and round, makes you miserable, and then it goes where? Liver. Well, for you guys at home, liver. The point being, your liver has got about 600 different jobs to do. But now what your liver does, it has to reprioritize. It says, hey, instead of me running the metabolism, right? Because your liver is your only fat-burning organ. Right? You cannot burn a paperclip worth of fat unless your liver's fired up. Right? So now we're not running metabolism, now we're not recycling sex hormones, now we're not doing all the other 600 jobs your liver needs to do, because your liver is saying, I've got to detox this stuff. And this is what creates a condition that you probably heard of, right? You've heard there's non-alcoholic fatty liver. What does that mean? That means I'm not drinking the alcohol that's affecting my liver and causing my liver enzymes to go up or have fatty liver. It means I'm actually producing the alcohol that's doing that. So the liver gets clogged up and fatty. People come to me, they usually don't have a gallbladder because it's been working so hard for so long. Now they're gaining weight because the metabolism is going down, weight goes up. And meanwhile, and we can back up to what the good bacteria do, I'll just tell you one job of them is digesting food. So just understand this part. Let me summarize this for you. If you don't have enough good gut flora or bacteria in the gut, you don't digest food well. If you don't digest food well, your pancreas pumps out extra insulin to help digest food. Insulin's a fat storage hormone. So this is where people come to me, they're eating chicken and broccoli, kind of like I mentioned before, perfect diet. They bring me food journals, they spread it out on my desk, like, Doc, what am I doing wrong? And I look at it and I go, you're not doing anything wrong, but you might as well be eating Snickers bars, right? Like, not literally, but the reality is if you're eating something and you're not digesting it well, and your pancreas is pumping out insulin to help digest it, you're not gonna lose any weight, right? So if you consider, okay, my liver's struggling because the gut isn't working right, but also because the gut isn't working right, my insulin's high. High insulin and low liver function, forget losing weight. It's like never gonna happen, right? It's like banging your head against the wall. And these are the people who come to me and they've watched all the YouTube videos and everything else, and what have they figured out? They're like, well, I probably should try to keep my insulin down, so they're usually doing keto and intermittent fasting and all these different things, and combination of the two, and low calorie, and they're like, I don't get it, doc. I can't work any harder on it than this. And the reality is they shouldn't have to. What it really boils down to is scrubbing the gut clean, cleaning up the liver, firing it all back up, growing back the villi. Because look, if you pull out the muck, they estimate an average of 5 to 15 plus pounds in the average person. Mucoid plaque, biofilm, call it whatever you want. The objective is pull out the muck, stimulate the growth of the villi, restore the population of the good guys. When you restore the good guys, then the liver's not struggling and it regenerates itself consistently, or at least it's trying to. If it doesn't have the job of detoxing everything that's going wrong with the gut, liver fires back up, metabolism goes up, insulin resistance comes down, and everything changes. And that's really the key to the whole thing. So that's really what I've been focusing on, gosh, for years now. And we've had great success with it by not necessarily saying, hey, you have inflammation, right? And then you need turmeric or some kind of anti-inflammatory herbals. More importantly, getting to the root of the problem, scrubbing it all clean, fixing it. It generally takes a little bit of time, but the cool part about this is once it's done, right? If you have enough good guys, they'll keep bad guys in check indefinitely. And the reason people take so many supplements is they don't have enough good guys and they understand the symptoms because they, go online and look around. So they're chronically taking extra probiotics, but again, they have no place to live. So they don't ever recolonize, you're always taking them. At the same time, they're trying to kill yeast with itraconazole, fluconazole, all sorts of supplements, etc. Look, guys, you could wipe the yeast down to nothing practically. And if you don't have enough, a healthy flora and enough good guys to keep them in check, what's gonna happen? Just grow right back. So what most people are managing is this. I got some good guys, got some bad guys. As long as I don't eat any sugar and I eat pretty well, I can keep these guys in check. As soon as I have, a good weekend or a bad weekend, depending on how you want to put it, and it's like birthday cake or ice cream or something like that, it all just grows back, they start all over, and they're perpetually frustrated. So I guess I'll leave you with this for today. At the end of the day, just make sure your time, your effort, your energy is focused on fixing the gut, not just trying to put in good guys or kill bad guys. It's about growing back the villi, repopulating them, cleaning up the liver, getting heavy metals out, which is like yeast's favorite food. And when you tie all that together in a consistent, roll up your sleeves and get her done, it changes everything long term. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rebel Reset podcast. If anything there made sense or resonated with you, don't stop there. Take the next step. So head over to join.drinfantino.com. In there's a video where I explain all of this in more detail. There's actually also an opportunity to book a consultation so we can dive into what's going on with you, see if this is actually something I can help you with. And remember, just because you have these symptoms, that doesn't mean it always has to be that way. It's not your destiny. You don't have to be on this journey forever. There's absolutely an answer to the problem. I will see you in the next episode and we'll dive into it more.